I'm Nick Coffey, and this is the third installment of the Creatures of Cthulhu Mythos series, where we take a look at some of the darkest creatures lurking in unseen places. Let's dig in. The first entry of tonight is the Dunwich Horror. And to tell the tale of the Dunwich Horror, one must first tell the tale of the Whatleys. Now, some want money and some want fame, and some simply want to usher in the literal end of our world. Old Man Whatley, the patriarch of the Whatleys, more or less fit into this third category, and he had a simple dream, and this dream was to have his own eldritch abomination literally attached to his family tree. That's why he let Yog-Sothoth, a being of immense power, have its way with his pale, almost albino daughter, Lavinia. And like most human god intercourses, this wasn't a pleasant experience. From what is to be gathered, it was downright painful. The Dunwich Horror is the name of the child that resulted, an invisible, unimaginable thing that they kept hidden within their barn. In time, more and more of the Whatleys' neighbors took notice of the strange noises coming from the barn, and the otherworldly nature of Old Man Whatley himself and his family, whom the folk rightly believed were involved with dark arts and wizardry. As to the desires of the Dunwich Horror, it's hard to tell if it ever had any. See, the Dunwich Horror simply grew and grew in the confines of the barn until the massive, invisible creature was so great that it uprooted the entire barn, wreaking havoc on the surrounding area by way of its sheer size. Enormous elephantine footprints followed the unseen beast as it trudged along in destruction, obscured by the barn crumbling around it. Is the Dunwich Horror immortal? No, it doesn't seem so. It can definitely be hurt and defeated. Like many infant attempts at hybridization, the Dunwich Horror can be destroyed by mostly conventional means. The monster is quite like the last episode's hybrid Uganak, the disastrous child of Nyarlathotep and a human. Uganak seems to bear resemblance to Nyarlathotep, and the same can be somewhat said of the offspring of Yog-Sothoth. As mentioned, from its and Lavinia's encounter, there came two brothers, one being the vaguely humanoid Wilbur, who was feverishly dedicated to serving his father and controlling the dark magic within the Necronomicon, while the unnamed brother, the Dunwich Horror, is a much more primal, powerful force. Wilbur embodied cunning and studiousness, and the Horror embodies Yog-Sothoth's sheer power, will, and inherent nature of grotesqueness. Moving on to the insects of Shagai, otherwise known as the Shann. These cosmic refugees are a subject of great interest. Their home world of Shagai was destroyed by the Song of Groth, after which they set out on a nomadic journey through the cosmos to find a new home. Let me just explain Groth really swiftly. Groth is a planet-sized entity, a sphere drifting in space with a single enormous eyeball. While it travels through the universe, it sings a strange song which can awaken sleeping old ones, bringing about the destruction of whatever planet they might be on. And while drifting in space, Groth awakened the worm that gnaws in the night, which is reminiscent of the sandworms from Dune, which destroyed the Shann's home world. The Shann, as they call themselves, are insectoid creatures around the size of a small dog, capable of interstellar travel and mental intrusion. They worship the blind idiot god, and thus they've adopted the ability known as Kirlian phasing, the ability to phase into the brains of organic life forms, one of their favorites being humans. Once they've found a nest within a victim's head, they'll gradually exert control over its host until it eventually possesses full cognitive control. And this is really, really bad, because the mindset of these creatures is so far removed from that of a human, and their defining traits include sadism and morbid curiosity, a trait shared by all the Shann in their respective categories, servants of the blind idiot god, and curious heretics looking to experience new sides to sadism and pain. One might mistakenly misdiagnose a victim of the Shann and simply lock them up for being crazy, after which the Shann can easily leave the human host. The Shoggoth Lords are curious creatures. Now you might already know what a Shoggoth is, and the Shoggoth Lords are not much different. The Shoggoths were a slave race that stood up against their masters in Earth's prehistory, eventually reigning supreme in their basalt cities in the frosty mountains. Over time, with any species, evolution took hold. Some Shoggoths gained greater strength and intelligence than others, and a hierarchy was established. The Shoggoth lords are the more independently sentient and intelligent Shoggoths, able to use their amorphous nature to shapeshift in a sense. Instead of approaching you in the guise of a massive blob, a Shoggoth lord would be more inclined to approach you in the vague shape of a human, sometimes even dressed. A good example is Mr. Shiny. Mr. Shiny is the moniker of a particularly sentient Shoggoth lord. Mr. Shiny often assumes the shape of a dapper gentleman, and is for all we know one of the very rare Shoggoths with magical abilities, if not the only one. This really outlines the Shoggoth's ability to adapt to its environment, and we should take heed not to make the same mistake their creators did. It also says something curious about social structures, that the social structures and hierarchies that we see within humans is just as relevant for the race of the Shoggoth. The last ones up are the great race of Yith. The Yithians are some of my favorite creatures in the mythos, simply by way of how interesting they are. These are wise beings, and as mentioned in episode 2, they are the greatest enemies of the flying polyps, and vice versa. There is a dichotomy in this relationship with the relative primitiveness of the polyps and the excessive knowledge and advancement on the part of the Yithians. Unlike almost every creature in the Cthulhu mythos, the extraterrestrial Yith are actually considered benevolent, if not friendly. Despite their lanky, lobster-like appearance, they're masters of engineering and physics, and very capable in their own right. Their main characteristic is their ability to project their consciousness across time, giving them the power to actually swap consciousness with another creature, including humans. A Yithian swapping consciousness with a human leaves the human mind in a foreign and frightening body, more specifically the Yithian body, and they simply don't understand what's happening and are forced to endure until they regain their original body. That being said, it is possible for a Yith to switch permanently. They used this power to escape catastrophe, as they did when the flying polyps attempted to eradicate their entire species. In this dire situation, they swapped their consciousness with those of an insectoid species that reigns dominant on a distant future Earth. A bit of a spoiler warning here for Call of Cthulhu's Dark Corners of the Earth. In this game, the protagonist turns out to be part Yithian, and therefore able to use all their advanced weaponry against the polyps and the deep ones. They're all around good guys, and there's even one in Futurama. That's it for now. Remember to tune in next time for more Eldritch Abominations. And if you liked this, you might enjoy our show, Ministerium Miskatonic Radio. Link is in the description. Thank you.